You refresh your PT4 graph after another brutal losing session. It's worse than you thought. Down another 10 buy-ins to add to the rest of the losses this month. When's it going to end? It's hard to remember when you last had a winning session, or even when you won a big all-in. You can't help but feel angry and frustrated at how poker is going. But it wasn't always this way. Just last month, you had one of your biggest winning months and felt invincible. Your confidence was sky high and you were playing some of your best poker. It was easy back then. You were winning all-ins, your bluffs were going through, and you were soul reading the competition. That feels like a distant memory now. You start to replay the session you've just had. The first few coolers you could take, but by the fifth one, you'd had enough. Then the moment happened. You finally got it in good against that aggressive opponent who'd been going after you all session, only to get 2 outed on the river. You couldn't help but think, why does this always happen to me? By this point, you couldn't contain your frustration. You started chasing your losses, calling down lighter on rivers, and going for high variance bluffs. Nothing worked, and you're left staring at a devastating loss, wondering where it all went wrong. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. One moment, you're on top of the world and loving poker. The next, you are left wondering, when are you ever going to win again? The emotional roller coaster that poker takes you on can be brutal at times. However, I'm here to let you in on a little secret. Nobody gets a free pass. If you want to be able to rise to the top in poker and play your best poker regardless of how results are going, then you need to learn to ride the roller coaster and develop the crucial skill of emotional regulation. Without this skill, poker will continually chew you up and spit you out. But once you've learned how this skill works and developed it, you'll be able to handle anything that poker throws your way. So let's dive in. In this video, you are going to learn the challenge of emotions and why many players are slaves to them. How building emotional awareness will change your life and your performance at the poker tables forever. How to rewire your mind for poker so that you feel in control when everyone else is losing their shit. Emotions and poker performance. We aren't robots. We aren't even super rational. In fact, most of our decisions are made by feel. We choose the option that feels best in the moment, then we rationalize it after. The challenge you have as a poker player is that heightened emotions often lead to biases and errors in your decision making. Let's say you're trying to decide whether to make a loose river call against an aggressive opponent who's been pushing you around all session. At the start of the session, this spot would have been an easy fold, as you can't see many intuitive bluffs he could have. But now you're feeling frustrated, and you don't want to give up. You remind yourself that this guy's aggressive, and he's been going at everything. You feel like he's been pushing you around, and you want to show him not to mess with you. You decide to call, only to be shown the winning hand. As the cards got turned over, you instinctively knew that you were beat. Although you rationalized it in the moment, seeing he was aggressive and making moves on you, in hindsight, it becomes as clear as day to you that this spot was not a call. You allowed the emotion in the moment to cloud your better judgment. Spots like this happen often. Players justify what they think is a logical decision, not realizing it's been heavily influenced by their compromised emotional state. So today, I'm going to take you on a journey on how to regain control. Firstly, you need to understand your emotions and how they are impacting you. Step 1. Building emotional awareness. Your emotions drive your behavior. Without an awareness of what you're feeling, it's impossible to fully understand your own behaviors and to manage your actions accordingly. Unfortunately, many poker players have become detached from their feelings and they don't notice subtle changes to their internal state. This is where mistakes happen. When you are aware and in control of your emotions, you can think clearly and creatively, manage stress and challenges, and act with confidence. Emotional awareness allows us to notice a change in our internal state, both on and off the tables, and use that change to move us towards our goals. Now let's bring this to the poker context, and I want you to reflect if any of these situations sound familiar to you. Do you often act impulsively, doing things you know you shouldn't, only to regret it later? Do you feel disconnected from your feelings or emotionally numb? Do you feel like you are on an emotional roller coaster when you grind, all extremes and no balance? Do you find yourself acting irrationally based on your emotional states, but are unable to spot it at the time? Well, all of these are challenges related to a breakdown in your emotional awareness. Fortunately, emotional awareness is a skill, which means with patience and practice, it can be learned. To do this, you need to get familiar with your subjective experience. Your subjective experience has 3 components which you need to learn to become more familiar with. The first is, what are you feeling? This is when you get in tune with the emotion itself and label it. How intense is it? Does it feel good or bad? The sooner you can spot this change, the better. Frustration is a much easier emotion to deal with than anger. The second is, what physical sensations do you notice? How is your body reacting? Do you have sweaty palms or tightness in the chest? Do you feel hot in the head or agitated? Most emotions have a common signature of how they feel in the body that we can learn to identify. And the third, what thoughts do you have? How is your mind responding? Are you calling your opponent an idiot? Are you blaming yourself? Do you ruminate on how unlucky you are? The nature of your thoughts will generally line up with the emotion. Negative thoughts accompany negative emotions. When you do this often, you unlock a superpower that you never knew you had. You start to regain control of your operating system and see patterns in your behaviors that you were unaware of. It's like running a leak finder and having all your weaknesses presented to you. This is when things start to get interesting and the work begins. Now, as an exercise, for the next 7 days, pay attention to the emotions that you experience whilst at the poker tables. Label the most common emotions. Note down how they feel in your body and the thoughts that accompany them. This is a crucial foundational step to start regaining control of your emotions. With this newfound awareness, you'll be ready to move on to the next step, which is to tackle your emotional responses. Step 2, map out your triggers. We each have our triggers, things that wait for us in the dark. Neil Gaiman. Now, before I was a mindset coach, I struggled with my own emotional flare-ups. I remember a time when I was 5 hours into a heated heads-up battle with my poker nemesis. It was 2015, and I'd been shot taking the 1K level on PokerStars for the past 3 months with little success. There was a lot of bad blood between me and this particular reg, to the point that we hadn't interacted for months. We just load each other's lobbies up every day. This particular session started really bad, and I was 12 binds down within the first hour. I only knew that as I couldn't reload the lobby because I bust out my cashier. After waiting for a reload, over the next 4 grueling hours, I managed to battle my way back to even, and I was just about ready to call it a day. And then disaster struck. I was in 2 big river spots, one with the nuts and one with likely the best hand. I click all in on the hand I have the nuts, but nothing happens. I click again, and still it's not responding. What the hell is going on? I shout out loud. My fists are clenched and I feel a hot flush. I soon realized that my internet has gone down and I frantically try to restart it. 10 seconds quickly turn to 3 minutes and my tables are completely frozen. It's a hyper table format, and I know by the time it comes back, I'm gonna be blinded out of all 4 games. This is when I lost my shit. I let out the biggest roar of my life. It was so loud that my girlfriend comes running in from a different room, expecting to see a murder scene or me wrestling with a python. Just a week earlier, we'd had a python break into our Bali villa, so snakes were a real threat. I'm in such a rage that I can't even tell her what's happening. I'm trembling with rage, punching my desk and screaming at my frozen monitor. To say this was uncharacteristic of me would be an understatement. It wasn't until a few hours later, when the mist had cleared, that I could reflect on what had happened. I'd been triggered, and I'd lost emotional control. Not my proudest moments, but a learning experience nonetheless. As you play your poker session, many events will happen that can lead to an emotional response. I like to refer to these moments as triggers, as they are a catalyst moment that changes our subjective experience and initiates our future actions. A trigger event could be your opponent hitting a 2-out on the river or getting crushed for the past hour of your session. The trigger itself is often the last of a sequence of events that are built up to a tipping point. The first 3 bad beats you could handle, but by the 6th one, you blow up. Having worked with poker players for the past 7 years, here are some of the most common triggers players mention to me. Bad beats, making mistakes, running bad, getting Kool-Aid, being card dead, losing relentlessly, a particular opponent getting lucky. These are broad categories, so spend some time thinking about your specific triggers. Now becomes an important phase where you start to link changes in your subjective experience to specific triggering events. When I teach this to my poker athletes, I get them to observe their emotional reactions whilst playing poker for 7 days. When they notice they are feeling a negative emotion, they take note. And after their session, they write down what trigger events led them to feel that way. At first, they might miss some of these changes whilst in game, but on reflection afterwards, they can pinpoint when their emotional state changed and what event triggered it. The final step is to flesh out what actions you take whilst in this compromised emotional state. For example, when a bad beat makes you feel frustrated, do you then start playing aggressively or calm down your opponent's lighter? At the end of the day, what we care about most is how these emotional states are impacting your behaviors. So to zoom out and take a big picture lens, we have a trigger event, which leads to a change in your subjective experience, which then leads to a change in the actions and behaviors. So here's what you need to do. Map out your most common triggers at the poker tables. Get familiar with the feelings, physical sensations, and thoughts that come once the trigger is activated. Understand exactly how this negatively impacts your behavior and leads to mistakes at the tables. Once you become familiar with how you are feeling and thinking, and how external events are triggering you and altering your behaviors, you can now get to work on consciously altering the process. You can put yourself back in control of your actions and reprogram your mind for poker success. Step 3, rewire your mind for poker. Some of the most dramatic movie scenes I remember watching when I was younger was when a bomb was ticking down and ready to explode. The stakes were high. If the bomb went off, everyone was going to die. Often the bomb would tick down all the way to the last few seconds before the hero would cut the right wire to disarm the bomb. As I was watching on the edge of my seat, I was thinking, what if he doesn't make it in time? Or what if he cuts the wrong wire? Fortunately, the hero was able to act just in time and knew the exact right wire to cut. Now, our emotions are just like the bomb. If we let them run on autopilot, they're often going to blow up in our face. However, if we're able to act fast enough and with some skilled execution, we can disable any emotion. In the same way that a computer can be reprogrammed, so can we reprogram our mind and emotional responses. By consciously taking back control of the operating system, we can remove faulty programs that aren't serving us and replace them with new programs that move us towards our goals. The stimulus response cycle. When an event happens at the poker tables, we can react in one of two ways. We either accept what has happened or we resist it. If we accept the event, then there is no emotional reaction and we can move on with our lives unaffected. When we don't accept what has happened, we resist the event, which triggers the emotional response. Resisting is when we express dissatisfaction at an event that has already happened. Let's say you're facing an overbet on the river and you're holding a bluff catch in hand. It's a close spot, so you try to evaluate how many bluffs your opponent would have to make this a profitable call. As your time bank approaches zero, you decide it's probably a profitable call, only to see your opponent turn over the nuts. Now, in this moment, you will either accept what has happened or you will resist it. When you accept it, you will acknowledge that your opponent had the best hand on this occasion and that you lost the pot. You might mark the hand for review later, and then you're on to the next hand. That's it. When you resist, however, you will start to express dissatisfaction with losing the pot. Your mind will get active. Maybe I should have folded there. Why does he always have the nuts? Although these seem like innocent thought patterns, these are the mind's way of resisting what has happened and trying to fix it. You then start to feel frustrated that things aren't feeling your way, which starts to impact your decision making. If you are lucky, when you play poker, your subconscious programs will allow you to accept every event that happens. But what if you find yourself resisting? You then have two options. You can react unconsciously, or you can respond consciously. You can allow the reaction to play out in a predictable way, or you can consciously choose how you would like to act instead. You can consciously move yourself from resisting to accepting. Upgrading your programs. Just like the programs that run your computer can be upgraded, so can the programs and behaviors that run your life. I'm about to share something very powerful with you right now, so take note. Every time you are experiencing an emotion, it is prolonged by the meaning that you are given the event or circumstance you find yourself in. The meaning that you give the event is the glue that holds everything together. If you consciously upgrade your thoughts and the meaning you give an event, the emotion will drop altogether. The feelings and physical sensations will either change completely or they'll feel a lot more manageable. When you are able to do this correctly, your emotions start to synchronize with the new thought pattern, which breaks the old habitual cycle. You will effectively be installing a new program that overrides your old conditioned reaction. You will even feel the same emotional reaction and physical sensations in your body. Only now, instead of letting things escalate further, you will use this as an opportunity to change the meaning that you're given the event. You will go from resisting it to accepting it. This will disarm the emotional response in the same way cutting the right cable will disable a bomb. Let's see how this works in real time at the poker tables. You've been running bad for the last 2 hours, which has triggered you. You can feel the tension in your hands and you notice the hot flush coming over your body. This is a familiar feeling. You're getting angry. Your mind is getting very active and you start telling yourself, this is unfair. Why does this keep happening to me? Subconsciously, this triggers a threat and danger signal, which floods your body with more cortisol and adrenaline to deal with the situation. You feel like you need to fight back, so you start playing more aggressively and forcing the action. After losing a few buy-ins to spirit players, you decide enough's enough and you end your session. You hope that you'll run better tomorrow. Although this seems like a justifiable reaction based on the events that unfolded, it's far from optimal and very costly. Notice that you were resisting what was happening and the meaning that you were giving the event wasn't helping you. To go back to the computer analogy, this is like running a faulty program. Imagine every time you clicked on your web browser, it took you to your email inbox. You'd quickly realize that there was a fault with the program. Rather than continuously clicking on it and hoping to get a different response, you'd quickly upgrade the program or reinstall it. This is how you need to approach your emotional responses. Creating your new programs. Once you've learned how to spot common triggers and gained awareness of how this impacts how you feel, think, and act, you can now start to fight back and consciously choose some new programs to replace them. As the meaning you are given to the event is what is fueling the emotional response, if you can consciously change the meaning that is attached to the situation, you disarm the bomb. The goal is to think of a reframe for the trigger which is more accurate and in reality than the previous one you were using. You have to go from resisting the event to fully accepting it. I'll go through some examples now to show you how this looks. Let's say you've made a mistake at the poker tables. The old program says, I'm such an idiot. I should know better, which is resisting. The new program says, this is an opportunity to learn. I will study the spot later and learn from it, which is accepting. Or maybe you're on a downswing. The old program says, I just can't win anymore. When will this end? The new program says, this is just variance. If I keep showing up and playing well, it's only a matter of time before I start winning again. Or you're getting run over and cooled out for multiple hours. The old program tries to run and says, this is unfair. I can't catch a break. The new program says, I don't control the cards. I will stay patient and stick to my winning strategy. The key to this phase is coming up with your own reframe that feels right for the situation. Imagine yourself being in the heat of the trigger event. If you could remember to use the new program, would it be effective? Would it allow you to accept the event rather than resisting it? If not, try something new until you arrive at a new meaning that feels authentic to you. Once you have it, you need to work on consciously installing the new program until it becomes the default reaction for that triggering event. We covered a lot today, so here's a reminder of the 3 steps you need to take to get off the emotional roller coaster. Step 1, build emotional awareness. Step 2, map out your triggers. Step 3, rewire your mind for poker. Go back through this video, take action on what you've learned, and you'll thank me later.